right, hello everybody. Today I'm just out in my backyard and I'm gonna play around. I can't go anyplace because of the whole lockdown thing, and if you're like me, you're sort of going a bit stir crazy. So what I thought I'd do is come out in the backyard. I have some nice clouds up in the sky, as you can see right here, and I wanted to try some long exposure on them and you know, just practice some stuff and play around, and it's a perfect time to do it. You know, I can do it in my backyard and I can just hang out here and do what I need to do. So the first one I'm going to do is set it up so that I have the longest exposure possible. So what I did was I set my ISO, and let me reset that down to 100 there. All right, so I got my ISO set to 100, and then I have it set at f22, and that gives me 1/50th of a second. I'll move you in right there so you can see that. All right, so it gives me 1/50th of a exposure. So I also have it set on a 2-second delay on the timer, and that way it gives it time for everything to calm down. So on my first shot, it's okay. There's not really much cloud movement because you know, that's just not a long enough time. Now, one of the tricks that you can do when you're shooting is that if you want something to move a little quicker across the frame, is you can zoom in a little bit. By zooming in, we have less of a frame, and so the stuff appears to travel a little faster. So I don't think that's going to make that much difference on here, but let me just set you guys down here for a sec so I can do this. All right, so I'm back. So I set that, zoomed in a little bit. I don't know that's going to make that much difference on the clouds, but we'll just go ahead and we'll take a quick shot of it. There we go. All right, so I don't know if we'll see much movement. You'll be able to see the picture now. I'm not going to be able to see it. I just see the back here. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a neutral density filter in front of it. Now, all a neutral density filter is it's like sunglasses for your camera. So I use the Lee system, and let's see here. Not easy to do with one hand holding on to you guys right here. So this is a Lee 10-stop filter, and you can see that it's pretty dark. You know, it's pretty black there, and it even has foams. Let me get you guys back here. There you are. And it has foam around it to prevent light leaks. So I'm going to slide that down here, and let me see. Let me make sure that I have a 50th of a second. So I'm going to say a 60th of a second is my shutter speed here. All right. So let's get this, I think this moved just a little bit, so we'll change that. Now I am on manual focus so that nothing changes. I have the stabilizer off so that that all stays the same. And I'm gonna take that off so that I'm not live view. So now what I wanna do is I wanna change this. First I wanna calculate how long my exposure is gonna be. Now, I have downloaded an app here. That's the Lee Filter app. And let me get to it. It looks like this. And so I'm going to press the 10 stop, which is at the top there, the 10 stop. And I had a 60th of a second. So I'm going to rotate this dial on the left side here to a 60th of a second. And that tells me that I need a 15-second exposure for this particular filter, because a 10 stop here makes it 15 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and go to manual now, and I'm going to set my, and let's see, I don't know if I can get you guys down here. Let's see. Ah, there we go. So I'm gonna set this down to 15 seconds. There we are. There it is. All right. And I'll bring you guys back up here. Still getting used to this gimbal here. And especially when you're looking at it, it's all backwards. Okay, so now I have 15-second exposure. I'm gonna go ahead and take that shot. And we'll let go for 15 seconds. I'll fast forward through this for you. Okay, so there's our 15-second exposure. And when I look through, I can start to see the clouds are streaking a little bit. And I like that. I like the way that it looks. But I wouldn't mind having it a little bit longer. So one of the things I can do here is I can add another filter on there. I can also add a polarizing filter. I do have a 6-stop, so I don't know how that's going to work, but let's try the 6-stop here. And I think that's going to be quite a long exposure once I do that. But let me add it into the front here. And again, let me get you guys down there so you can see that. All right, so Unfortunately, that's pushed my lens down quite a bit here. So I'm going to move it back to, I think it was a 50 right there. All right, so I have that on there. Okay, so I have that on there. So now that was a 15-second exposure. So what I'm gonna do is I press the 6 stop now, and so I'm gonna go to 15 seconds because that's what it is with the other one. And so that becomes a 16-minute exposure. That's a long time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that shot. Now the light's gonna change throughout that time, so we'll see how that comes out. So let me go ahead and change this. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my settings on bulb. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change my setting to bulb right there. And let's see, let me get you back over here towards me. Okay, so I changed my setting to bulb on my camera, and what I'm gonna do is change this to 16 minutes, which I have right there at 16 minutes. And so I'm gonna go ahead, I have a 2-second delay, so it'll be like 2 seconds short, but I think that'll be fine. I'm gonna go ahead and press start. And so that's the 2 seconds, and there it is. So now I have a 16-minute. So I will be back in 16 minutes to show you what that looked like. Okay, so 16 minutes is a long time. Matter of fact, I started doing some weeding in the backyard here, and I live up in the high desert in Southern California. And if people tell you that the desert doesn't have, nothing grows in the desert, I'm gonna tell you they're liars, because weeds grow like crazy. So anyway, during that time I did some weeding, but I finally got a look here and on the back, and you're gonna see the picture, of course, more so, much better frame up than I'm looking. But I have a lot of cloud movement. Now you can see back here behind me that the clouds sort of have dissipated as it's getting towards evening now. They're sort of going away. So I may have to continue this experiment tomorrow. We were supposed to have some more clouds. But my main point here is that even though we're stuck at home and we can't go out and shoot what we want to go out and shoot, we can practice our skills here at home and perfect them so that they work out really well. Now earlier in the day I took a 16-second exposure and found out that I needed to block the back here a little bit because of where the sun was at. The sun was actually shining on this back part here, and that needed to be blocked, and it sort of ruined the picture. So something that I wouldn't know, and if I spent 16 minutes like at a national park or someplace and doing that and it messed it all up, that's time wasted. So learning all those things in your backyard is really worth the time spent. So we're sitting around doing nothing much, might as well do that. Now tomorrow I'm going to bring you guys on out here. I'm going to do some macro in the backyard. I have some ants that are really working like crazy to get their holes all readied up for spring and summer. So tomorrow let's try some macro in the backyard and experiment with the setup that I have for that. Back in my office now with the pictures loaded up on the computer, I want to take a quick look at them. And this helps me decide some of the issues that I have to deal with. For example, I used an older camera, one of my older cameras. I always keep all my cameras, so I have a 5D Mark II that I use for this. And I wanted to see how that would work, because long exposures, a lot of times I'll set them up, and you saw that a 60-minute exposure, I want to use like the older camera for that, and then I can shoot other things with my newer cameras. So I found that, number one, I had a dirty sensor. When we look in at these pictures here, for example, you can see that I have some dirt marks here all around there. And the other thing I found out is that at the edges I'm starting to get some vignetting, so that full frame camera will vignette with that 24-105 that I have. So oops, let me bring that back and just go down to full size. So I found that out, so that's a good thing to know. Now here's the picture that was the first one I took, which was the wider angle, and this was at 28mm, and this one here is at 40mm, so there's not a big difference between the two. And at 1/60th of a second, there's really not a big difference between the two as far as cloud movement. So we can see that when I zoom in on the clouds here, we don't see any movement at all. So obviously 1/60th of a second is just not going to cut it. Now from there, I went to the 15-second exposure, and that's this one right here. And we start to see some really good cloud movement with the 15-second. Now, in this case, I know that I have a 10-second, I have a 10 stop and a 6 stop, and I have a polarizer, which will give me about 2, maybe 2.5 stops. So what I need to do is get like a 1 and a 2 stop filter in addition to give me just that little bit longer time, because going from the 15-second exposure all the way to the 16-minute exposure, 955 seconds or something like that, it's just too much of a difference. Now the other thing I noticed too with this older camera that I did not know is that the back needs to be shielded. The viewfinder needs to be shielded because it does allow light. Now that is a problem with a lot of cameras, but all of the other ones that I've shot long exposures with, it has not been an issue. So this is the first time I've shot it with the 5D Mark II. So I'm definitely going to have to. And I did find the little rubber piece that goes over that to block that. So I'm going to use that on there to prevent this light leak that you see in the picture right here. So earlier in the day, I shot this picture here, and this was a 30-second exposure, 40mm. And you can see that I got pretty good cloud movement, and that's looking at my Joshua Tree looking east. So the sun is west, setting west, so I'm getting a lot of sunlight coming through that viewfinder. Now on this one, it's not so bad, but when I get into this long exposure, you can see that with that sunlight coming through that viewfinder, it's really, really affecting the way that it looks. So it's really affecting the way that it looks. But all I gotta do is just make sure that I block off the back there, and that should get rid of that. And of course, that's what I'm gonna do the next time I go out and try that in the backyard, is I'm gonna make sure that I have that blocked out. So thanks for watching along. Hopefully you can take the time and go out in your front yard, backyard, and practice shooting some stuff. Tomorrow morning I'm gonna go out and get my macro rig on, which is this one right here, this rig right here, and gonna go out and photograph some ants on the ground and have some fun with that. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again.